You're watching KBHK, TV 44, San Francisco.
Good afternoon and welcome to Weekday. I'm Nancy Graham, filling in for Mary Lou Manali. And it's the Monday edition of Weekday. It's also the 17th of March. I just heard a statistic a few minutes ago that there are 60 million Americans who claim that they're Irish. So that means there's going to be lots of parties going on tonight. We hope that you're there celebrating with everybody. Coming up today on Weekday, we're going to be talking with a man who believes that history is nothing more than the study of warfare between secret societies. He's an authority on conspiracy. He's also a man who's been called the most scientific of the science fiction writers, Robert Anton Wilson. We're going to be talking to him. And we're also going to be talking to a gentleman who's going to give us some interesting information about Nicaragua. That's an item that's hot in the news today. You're going to want to hear more about that. You're going to want to hear about why we might not understand everything that our newspapers are telling us about the Sandinistas and the Contras. All that's coming up in this issue of Weekday when we come back right after this. This is the Illuminatus trilogy, and if you're familiar with it, you're going to know that 3 novels contained in the trilogy are The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, and The Leviathan. These came out in 1975. They are very famous, and the author is a cult hero in some circles, and he is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson. Welcome to Weekday.
Nice to be here.
I tell you, it's a pleasure to have you here. And as I told you before, my stepson is going to think I've been talking to President Reagan or somebody of comparable stature when I tell him I talk to you.
When I met Harrison Ford, the only thing I could think of to say is my kids are going to be thrilled to know I met you.
It's true. It's true. We all get to go around swapping guests and telling our kids about it. Why are you such a cult hero?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, I suppose, because I'm weird in the same way the growing generation is weird.
Iconoclastic is what some people call you.
Yes, I'm a very devout agnostic.
Okay, and iconoclastic suggests that you're not reverent about too many things.
The only thing I'm reverent about is money and sex.
And this is why you moved to Ireland? Which is a pure coincidence that we should have you on St. Paddy's Day. You said you moved to Ireland for a very good reason.
Yeah, for sentimental reasons. They don't tax raiders there, and I'm sentimentally attached to my money.
Okay, so no high-minded things for you. That's the interesting thing about you. Here you are, revered by a lot of the leaders of what's called the New Age movement, or the New Age conspiracy. And yet you yourself come on like, there isn't anything to be too reverent about anything.
I'm actually an editor of New Age magazine on top of all that. Well, there are 2 aspects to the New Age, the growing edge and the regressive edge. And I think the attitude of reverence is part of the regressive edge of the New Age. I'm on the skeptical, iconoclastic side of the New Age.
Oh, and yet there's so many people in the New Age that are so dreadfully serious about so many things.
I know. It really is dreadful, that kind of seriousness. I try to break it up with as much humor as possible.
What is New Age? How do you define that?
Well, it means so many things that it doesn't mean anything at all anymore. To me, the New Age means an openness to new ideas and the possibility of new forms of human society, and like going into space, for instance. That's very New Age to me.
Are you serious about space travel and space colonization?
Oh, yeah. I intend to go myself as soon as possible.
You're also a founding member, or you contribute to the L5 Society, I believe, which is a society to promote space colonization. How are we going to ever have space colonization now when NASA can't even, well, I don't want to be irreverent about NASA. It's not that they don't take care of things, but we don't have enough money going into NASA to promote real space exploration.
Well, we will have now that the Russians have started a permanently staffed colony. Once that sinks in and the American people start realizing there are Russians up there all the time, we'll have 3 space colonies up there.
Space exploration will become part of the Cold War. Okay, I wanted to ask you, because we don't have a lot of time, but Why do people say that your style of fiction is paranoid? It's paranoid fiction.
Well, because it is, deliberately. It's both paranoid and metanoid. Paranoid, everybody knows the meaning of. Metanoid is the opposite. Paranoid regards everybody with suspicion. Metanoid regards everybody as a possible genius or saint. And I take those extreme views and do a interplay between them in all of my books because I think character is the most ambiguous thing in the world. None of us knows ourselves, much less knowing anybody else.
Yes, character is ambiguous, but when it comes to plots, you're very famous for seeing connections and interconnections between a whole variety of things. And some people say, well, he's a conspiracy guy. He sees conspiracies everywhere.
I also see coincidence everywhere.
Isn't that just a matter of perception, though?
Well, yeah, both paranoia and metanoia are abnormal ways of looking at the world. The paranoid sees everything connected in a sinister way. The metanoid sees everything connected in a divine, marvelous way. And I keep shifting from normal perspectives to both of those two perspectives.
Have you always been like this?
No, I've deliberately cultivated those habits of thought because I don't think they're dangerous if you can switch from one to the other and back to the normal way of thinking too.
What kind of letters do you get? You get people who write you and say, I want to come and study with you, or you're the first person to understand a vision that I had when I was 5, or something like that?
I get letters from people who want to turn me into a perfect master. I write back and tell them, if you want to be a perfect slave, that's okay with me, but I'm not a perfect master.
Unfortunately, I think that there are a lot of people who would like to be in that kind of association.
But there are lots of, I'm not against people being perfect masters. I agree with W.C. Fields that it's immoral to leave a sucker in full possession of his money. So I'm all in favor of Rajneesh and other people who take advantage of that trait in human nature.
Let's talk about one of the conspiracies. The cocaine business in South America. What does that have to do with the following? Freemasons in Italy, the Vatican, and the CIA.
Well, that's a rather complicated story. Cocaine is nature's way of telling you that you've got too much money. It's the most expensive drug in the world, and it's one of the biggest businesses in the world. The Freemasons in Italy are basically a decent lot, I'm sure, but P2 was a conspiracy of a group of Freemasons in Italy who took over the Vatican Bank and turned it into a laundromat for cocaine money. They were also helping Nazi war criminals hide out in South America. They helped recruit the staffs for the death squads down there. All this has been well documented in the European press. For some reason, it hasn't got as much attention over here.
The connection of the Vatican laundering money is well documented in the European press?
It's been pretty well documented over here in a book called In Banks We Trust by Penny Lennox. Archbishop Marcinkus is either a crook or the most naive man in history because he was running the Cisalpine Bank in the Bahamas, and most of the cocaine money was going through there into the Vatican Bank and then disappearing into Swiss bank accounts. He may have thought he was dealing in baby booties, but if he wasn't that naive, he was up to his neck in the cocaine business.
Okay, you lost me for a second. What's the premise for why this would occur?
Well, it occurred because P2 saw a lot of money in it. P2 was a conspiracy of mafia people and Italian businessmen who were all Freemasons and saw that the Vatican Bank, if they could infiltrate it, was the best way to launder money in the world, because the Vatican Bank doesn't have to show records to anybody. The Italian government can't look at their records. The Vatican is a separate state.
Where do you come up with all of this? How do you get in touch with this kind of information that the average person is going to elude them?
Well, I discovered that by reading the Irish press, which covered this very well, and then I started looking for books on the subject to supplement the clippings I'd cut out of newspapers. There are trials going on in Italy right now. One of the members of P2 is Michele Sindona, who is the manager of Vatican finances in the United States. He's standing trial for murdering a public prosecutor, and he's also indicted for collaborating in the Bologna railway bombing. He was convicted in the United States of 65 counts of stock fraud.
This is fiction.
This is not fiction.
Okay. Remarkable, as it is. The other thing people associate with you is the pyramid on the $1 bill.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about?
I picked that as a symbol of ambiguity because I don't believe it means anything sinister at all, but there are a lot of very paranoid conspiracy buffs who have very weird explanations of what that means.
Such as?
Oh, there are people who think it means that Freemasons are controlled by a secret society from Tibet or by extraterrestrials, or in some way the United States government is being manipulated by a great white brotherhood of Hindu adepts, all sorts of weird theories like
Which
that.
of the early American forefathers, were Freemasons?
Most of them. Jefferson, Franklin, Washington, Madison, Monroe, Jackson.
Why? What was so
Reagan is a
about
Freemason, too. Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, was a
Who are
Freemason.
the Freemasons? Why does everybody want to belong to that organization?
Well, because it's if you want to get ahead in business or politics, it's good to belong to the club. It's like wearing the right school tie in England.
How are they different from the Kiwanis and the Lions and Elks?
They're different in that Freemasons do have a mystical tradition, which most Freemasons don't know much about. But if you go through all the ranks, as you reach the top, you begin to find out about the mystical inner tradition of Freemasonry. Also, it's different in that it's the biggest of all those fraternal organizations. And also, it has inspired more paranoia than any of the others. In England right now, they're very paranoid about Freemasons because of exposés about their control over Scotland Yard.
Well, one of the ironies about this in American history is that we were so opposed to the Catholic Church for so many years because we didn't want to have that outside influence. We thought that was antithetical to the American way. And yet, according to you, there are always these threads of outside influence anyway.
Well, everything is more complicated than it looks at first sight. Under Catholic law, you can't be a Catholic and a Freemason at the same time. But the people who were running P2 were all Catholics and Freemasons at the same time. And the president of Mexico is usually a Catholic and a Freemason at the same time. I live in Ireland, a 95% Catholic country, which is full of Masonic temples in every city.
The Widow's Son. This is your latest.
That's more about Freemasonic conspiracies.
Can you sort of give us a summary real quick about what it's about other than that?
It deals with the P2 conspiracy in Italy that I've been talking about, and it also deals with the Orleanist conspiracy in France in the 1770s and 80s, both of which were conspiracies within Freemasonry. They shouldn't be called Masonic conspiracies. They were conspiracies by cliques who were using Freemasonry as a cover.
You know, you're talking about history now. And yet, one of the other things that you often hear about you is that you're a visionary, that you're a futurist, that you've got ideas about the human potential.
Yes.
Can you share that with us quickly?
Oh, yes. Well, I believe that our ultimate destiny is to become gods. I think after space travel and longevity, we're eventually going to attain immortality and conquer space and time entirely.
The human...
I think there's too much pessimism around these days.
The human being's going to be able to live forever?
Yes.
You're sitting here and telling me that seriously, huh?
Yes, I'm telling you that very seriously.
How's that going to happen?
Through medical research. There's more money going into longevity research now than ever before in history, and there are more scientists working on that now than there were in the 70s even.
And the population problem will be taken care of by space colonization?
Yes. Millions of people will be leaving the planet every year in the next century.
But we know that death is a part of the whole life cycle, so you're ending a life cycle that's supposed to be natural.
Yes, but I think every product of the human mind is unnatural. Beethoven's Ninth is unnatural. Tic-tac-toe is unnatural. Differential calculus is unnatural. My books are unnatural.
Well, you're weird.
You bet I am.
And I like talking to you. I'm going to have to interrupt for just a second. We've been talking with a very natural man about evidently a lot of unnatural things, and I wish that you could stay and chat with us a little bit more. But we're going to talk about Nicaragua in a few minutes, but first we're going to take a look at Community Calendar. Thanks for coming today.
I'm glad to be here.
Writers, Robert Anton Wilson. We're going to be talking to him. And we're also going to be talking to a gentleman who's going to give us some interesting information about Nicaragua. That's an item that's hot in the news today. You're going to want to hear more about that. You're going to want to hear about why we might not understand everything that our newspapers are telling us about the Sandinistas and the Contras. All that's coming up in this issue of Weekday when we come back right after this. I think I've been talking to President Reagan or somebody of comparable stature when I tell him I talk to you. Why
When I
are
met
you...
Harrison Ford, the only thing I could think of to say is my kids are going to be thrilled to know I met you.
It's true. It's true. We all get to go around swapping guests and telling our kids about it. Why are you such a cult hero?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, I suppose, because I'm weird in the same way the growing generation is weird.
Iconoclastic is what some people call you.
Yes, I'm a very devout agnostic.
You're watching KBHK, TV 44, San Francisco.
Good afternoon and welcome to Weekday. I'm Nancy Graham, filling in for Mary Lou Manali. And it's the Monday edition of Weekday. It's also the 17th of March. This is the Illuminatus trilogy. And if you're familiar with it, you're going to know that 3 novels contained in the trilogy are The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, and The Leviathan. These came out in 1975. They are very famous, and the author is a cult hero in some circles. And he is Dr. Robert Anton Wilson. Welcome to Weekday.
Nice to be here.
I tell you, it's a pleasure to have you here. And as I told you before, my stepson is good. I just heard a statistic a few minutes ago that there are 60 million Americans who claim that they're Irish. So that means there's going to be lots of parties going on tonight. We hope that you're there celebrating with everybody. Coming up today on Weekday, we're going to be talking with a man who believes that history is nothing more than the study of warfare between secret societies. He's an authority on conspiracy. He's also a man who's been called the most scientific of the science fiction